Stories do lots of things for us besides entertain us, and probably entertaining us is the least important thing the stories do, but they need to be entertaining, because we're human beings and we'll go off and have a snack if we're not entertained. One thing stories do is they help us to imagine ourselves in situations that we are not immediately in, but might be sometime. And we can learn from what a character does something about how we are to live in our own story. And if you take the example, for instance, of Joseph and Potiphar's wife, and her trying to seduce him as he's a handsome young man, and he fleeing from her and doing the right thing. Now we live in a society that's constantly trying to seduce you in all kinds of ways, from buying the biggest plasma TV you can to pornography on the internet. Stories give us resources for thinking and for acting. So take the example of Joseph fleeing Potiphar's wife. If you've immersed yourself in that story and see that example of here's somebody who was in a situation that thousands of years later is not unlike the situation I'm in with this temptation, and see how he responded to it, that actually gives you an imaginative possibility for I could do the same. I could act in a right way. And that's true for all kinds of stories. I mean, it's true for the stories that grow out of the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King. You see how might you face situations where you're called to be just, and when it's risky for you. And stories about moral courage can give you moral courage if you're sort of shaped by them. But you need to be shaped by them almost before the temptation comes. And that's why it's so important to steep children in strong and powerful and rich stories, because you're shaping character. You're giving them possibilities, ways of thinking about the world. And so when those things arise in their life, it's not sort of, what am I going to do now as a blank slate? It's what am I going to do now as someone who has, for instance, committed to the story of faith. I've made this faith commitment. What does my story tell me a person like me should do in a situation like this? And so when we're teaching children, Bible stories and having them color Joseph's coat of many colors and all this kind of thing, we're not just sort of passing time with them while the adults are in the worship service. We are filling them with stories that are the raw material with which they can live.